Your clients are scaling fast, but their systems are falling apart. Sales data isn't synchronizing to their CRM. Marketing and operations are working in silos. They need automation help, but that's not your lane. You draw the line when it comes to Make, Zapier, or custom workflows in N8N because your focus is on the platform in particular. Where do you send them? Hello, I'm Paul, and welcome to episode 654 of the Paul Higgins podcast. In this episode, I talked to Jared Weiss from Matix Flows, and you will learn from Jared how to identify when your clients need automation support beyond basic platform workflows, what questions to ask to scope automation projects so you're not leaving money on the table, and how to position automation as a strategic infrastructure, not just another technical band-aid. Jared spent over a decade in Utah startups before launching Matix Flows 2.5 years ago. He bridges the gap between platforms like Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, probably a lot of the ones that you're working with at the moment, and the automation layer that makes them actually work together. I'll now hand you over to Jared Weiss from matixflows.com. Jared, fantastic to have you on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, look, we're going to dive into the world of automation and systems, but why don't we kick off with, from your perspective, who's your ideal client and what problems you love to solve for them?
So I think my ideal client in the last couple of years of doing this really is that kind of right on the cusp of scale business where they've got a product, they know that they're fulfilling it, customers are happy, but what's happening is they're really looking to scale and they're starting to really feel some of those growing pains. Systems aren't talking to one another. They're trying to keep overhead low. And what happens, I think, with business owners is as they start to scale, the noise just becomes louder and louder and louder as to what they need to put their attention towards. And I think I really enjoy working with those types of business owners because as a strategic partner, it allows me to kind of really help them cut through the noise and realize, hey, let's make sure that we have really clear analytics that allow us to make decisions on what our growth trajectory is. We're using data to drive a lot of the decisions that we're making. And then from an operations side, we're taking care of automations, syncing systems together and making sure that there's seamless transition between the customer experience so they can maintain that level of fulfillment and customer service as they're scaling. So there isn't this just like, oh, wow, this company got really big, but now their customer service sucks. Like we want to help maintain what got them there in the first place. And so I think having someone like me who can kind of move fast and move quick, make recommendations and be the one who's not only strategizing and helping solve problems, but the one who's actually executing it. Something I really enjoy doing is working with those types of business owners. It's just fast, you're solving problems, you're able to see the reports really quickly, you're able to start really seeing the trend over time. And then just working with a business owner and bringing their dream to life is something that I find a lot of fulfillment in.
Fantastic. And as you said, you've been in this, roughly 2.5 years. What was the catalyst for you to finally go out on your own?
That's a great question. So I've been in Utah working kind of in the startup realm for the last, 10 to 12 years. And what I love about that environment again is this kind of like fast, the energy is there. And I'm just such a curious person that whenever I identified problems in these startups, very rarely would I say, well, it's not my department, right? Like I'm a marketer. So like I started in graphic design because I enjoyed graphic design. And then I was in graphic design and I learned how to build websites. And then I was like, wow, marketing is really fun. I enjoy building these systems and putting them together. So then really started diving into marketing and started to build these kind of full funnel client experiences and just kept my curiosity and keep working it, kind of, learning user analytics softwares and how those implement, how CRMs work, what's the best practice, and just fixing those systems for these businesses was so much fun. And the silly part is that after like 2.5 years, I'd be like, all right, well, kind of bored now. So like time to go to the next one. And I would just continue to go to businesses, organize them, get everything set up so that the business owners had the data they needed to make decisions and then help scale marketing and really see what, testing something and seeing how how the results of that worked and tying those two directly to revenue. So about 2.5 years ago, I was working for a startup and it was kind of, really putting my heart and soul into it. And there was a lot of trying to kind of look at my own success, where I was headed and just kind of feeling a little bit stagnant. And then from there, just kind of transitioned into, how about let's just have me move to more of a consultant role. And then once I was in that, I was like, well, why am I taking these talents and just like providing them to just one business when there's no reason why I can't, take this and apply it to a number of other businesses. So I just started Well, actually, I was on a road trip and I just jumped on Upwork on my phone. And within like 2 hours, I had like a meeting scheduled with someone and I actually still had my full-time job. So I was like, oh shoot, like sorry, my availability is until next week. And the guy, the potential client was like, well, I need someone faster. So like this isn't gonna work out. And I was like, oh damn. But I saw there was potential there and I knew that I could do something. So yeah, it was within, a couple of weeks, I just started throwing up proposals and playing with real bullets. I mean, it was a wild ride for the first 6 or 7 months. I feel like every day my husband would come home and just be like, so how did today go? And I'd be like, today was a nightmare. Things were horrible. There's no hope. I'm just going to go get a job at Target. Like there's nothing I can do here. And then it went from that to, every day he'd come home and like, actually things went really great. Sign another deal. This client's stuff is working out really well for them. They're succeeding. And so it just kind of took off from there. And it's been an absolute whirlwind of a ride. But it's just nice to work with businesses and while also working on my own business. It just really allows the variety that I was looking for.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know that you famously say, ideas alone don't get results. It's just, systems that do. So, tell us, what's a system mean to you and therefore your clients?
I think being in the startup world, I kind of would always joke with these business owners just because I'm a very free spoken person. I don't particularly care if people fired me. Like I never lived in that world of fear. So when business owners would ask me questions, like I would always I'd speak freely and I would tell them like, that's a bad idea because of this, and this. I think when it comes to systems, a lot of times, right, like I would look at the full iceberg. Like I wouldn't just look at the tip of the iceberg. When someone said, we need to execute this campaign for this offering, I'm going, okay, well, how's that going to fit? How's that going to affect customer success? How's that going to affect sales? Is sales enabled? Are we going to be able to effectively hold this to the money that we are investing into the marketing campaigns, right? Like I just would dive into all those things and see the full picture and the holistic view of what that meant. And so idea owners loved having me because they would spit out an idea and I'd be like, okay, all right, let's break it down. Like let's start chopping this up into little pieces and see what actual implementation looks like and the implications of what it is that you're saying. And what was nice about those conversations is that it would then be the catalyst to, like, I actually just had a client meeting yesterday where they had brought an offering. We started kind of running through some things. Like, well, let's simplify this. Is this actually achieving the objective that we want?
Yes.
The way that we have this set up now really isn't. So let's maybe make some minor adjustments to this. Let's make this really focus on that core objective that supports the overall business. Then from there, let's focus on implementation, but let's maybe simplify things. And I think that's what I think has been really fun to provide these business owners is not just an overseas VA that's just like, I'll do whatever you tell me, but a strategic partner that pushes back and it just says, okay, well, let's refine this. Let's not do good. Let's not do better. Let's do the best that we possibly can.
Yeah, and look, working with a lot of consultants, the hard thing they find is how do I monetize that advice? It's,
Yeah.
sometimes they get in and it's like, I've quoted X, but I realize that the problem's much bigger. So how do you make sure that you're getting remunerated for that advice you're giving that's not just specific to, hey, this is how you use Zapier, as an example?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's been was a long challenge, has been a challenge for a long time. And I think kind of I've found as a groove that's worked for me was, and that's a lesson I learned very much in the beginning, was that my clients were scaling, but I was still getting paid the same amount. And I was like, I'm watching you make like $1.1 million this month, yet I'm still getting paid what we from the very first engagements. A lot of it was trying to identify ways to tie that based off of their needs, whether that's the number of strategy calls that we're doing per month. I've been playing around with different pricing structures in terms of like the number of development automation projects we have at a time and kind of giving them story points so that I can kind of gauge how things come in, especially as not just a strategist, but also as an executioner. I
Yes.
have to kind of be able to do both. So I think for clients that are expecting maybe more and that want more support, it allows me to kind of be flexible and say, okay, well, then let's do a meeting once a week. And then for those that are maybe not in a position to move as quickly, we kind of do every other week. And then we're looking at, the number of projects that we're doing. Because to me, the strategy part is kind of the fun part. And then the execution is where we start to see actual benefit instead of me just being a consultant that says, hey, I'm going to give you a report that tells you all of your problems. I'm able to bring a full solution by saying, here are your problems, but here are the solutions, and I'm going to implement those for you. So you're not having to go and interface through a project manager who's then going to disseminate that to 5 different people. It's like you have a direct connection to the person who's actually executing, which to me allows us to move way faster and allows me to in real time provide really valuable strategy by saying the software is incapable of doing that. So let's adjust our offering to what the software can do. That way, then we're setting ourselves up instead of trying to put a band-aid on this. Let's build this right from the ground up.
Yeah, great. And when it comes to LLMs, and we're this is coming out in December of 2025. Whatever we said now when we're recording this, we'll be superseded. But in the world we're in at the moment, there's, you got your Claudes, you got your ChatGPTs, you got your Geminis, are sort of the core ones, etc. Whatever your poison, like how much is if you look at the benefit that LLMs have helped you deliver your job versus 2.5 years ago versus now, is it been helping you more on strategy? Has it been helping you more on implementation? Has it been a mix of both? Just tell us a little bit about how has your job become easier due to huge rise of LLMs that's occurred in the last 2.5 years?
I'm not sure if my opinion will be super popular, but I mean, I think with LLMs, I think they're an extremely valuable tool. And I think with anything, they're kind of a double-edged sword because there were moments in my early career where when LLMs were first coming out that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But the problem for me is that like I could feel my like marketing creative mind kind of diminishing because I was just kind of like, I'll just do whatever it spit out to me. And that kind of removed a lot of the fun for me
Yes.
of like, okay, like I'm actually gonna like focus on what this headline is going to be. Like, I'm actually going to put some of my own energy into who are these people? What's the persona? What's the objective? And actually, like, exercise that muscle. So I think LLMs have kind of taken a little bit of not a backseat, but I've just refined how it is that I use them. It's something where I use them to brainstorm and maybe help get the engine started as a Kickstarter, but I try really hard to not rely on them as a whole because I run into scenarios where you use an LLM, it tells you, hey, this is what you should be doing. And then you do it, and then it doesn't work, right? And so I don't necessarily want to position myself in a place where like I don't have the confidence in myself to say, okay, that didn't work. Let's find another solution, right? I've used it a lot more to kind of just expand my general knowledge so that I can be a better strategist, not
Yes.
necessarily like using it. So even with my clients, when they're like, hey, we want to leverage AI, I'm like, that is great. Let's build a nice, strong foundation
Yes.
because LLMs are only as good as the input and as the prompts are. So let's build a strong foundation. LLM's not going to fix a business that already is not organized. It requires foundation. So let's build the automations as we can. Then we'll identify places that we can input LLMs or any type of AI into the system. But we need to have that strong foundation. It's like no matter how well an engine is running, like if it's not running well to begin with, no
Yes.
matter what additional auxiliary things you add to it aren't going to fix the problem if the root is not fixed. And I think that's where I kind of really focus along with that. But it's had a whole journey.
So, I think you're right. I always talk about a chain. Once was told that the longer the chain, the more damage, right? So the shorter, the more simple it is, then it's easier to automate. So it sounds like you go in and look because over time, all business owners, including ourselves that are running consulting businesses, it just gets messy, right? And, it's that zero, I forget what they called it, but it was like zero planning or something like that, where, okay, if you had to start from scratch again today, what would you do? Right. And it's hard to see that when you're inside the jar. It's hard to see the label of that simplicity. So you come in, you say, okay, before the technology, let's look at simplifying things. And then from there, I know, we're going to talk about Zapier and automations now. Do you have in your back pocket, well, I know this is the 80/20 where I can get value, or are you completely open to whatever the opportunity is that comes out of the simplification of that system?
I think a large reason why working with the clients that I do and why it's so much fun is kind of the newness of the challenge. I definitely don't maybe sit closer to the side of like, oh, this is the tech stack that I work with and that I'm familiar with, and you must do this.
Yeah.
Like, part of me really enjoys solving the problem. I mean, again, at the end of the day, to me, it's more like all software is just about the same. It's data tables, it's connections, like it's all the same with a different sticker on it, but it's all essentially really pretty looking Excel spreadsheets. So I
Yeah.
think by understanding the root of that, it allows me to go into a business and see, okay, well, how are we configuring this? How is this working? And it's one of those things where like I've had clients where like they come in and they're like, okay, well, I just want you to fix this small little thing. And it's very similar to like a mechanic, right? If I come in and I see your tires are bald, there's a 90% chance that your oil filter hasn't been swapped out. And I think what happens a lot with businesses, especially when they're starting, right? They're looking for kind of, inexpensive labor. They're trying to just get things off the ground. and they hire a lot of doers, and the doers they do a decent job, right? But like I've gone into websites and there are just like 37 forms and all of them are named new form. And you're just like, guys, this tech debt that we are building as we develop, we can't be doing this, right? And that's to me what growth and scale exposes is now we're going, well, why are we sending this email link to this subdomain that someone made 5 years ago, but now that's not no longer happening? Or why are we sending traffic to a phone number that we don't have control over? Or why is our sales team using their personal cell phones to manage sales calls? Like it's that type of stuff that business owners don't necessarily think about because I'm always client first, right? Like I'm not looking to build a business or build someone else's business in a way that they're beholden to me and I own the data, right? Like I treat every one of my clients' businesses as if it's my own. So I think it's fun to also be able to advocate for them when going into that tech stack and looking at it uniquely and being able to let them know, hey, you know what, this might not be worth it. You can actually do both of those things in this software, or this is not providing you an impact.
Yes.
Let's either add or subtract.
And how often is it that the software itself has got its own built-in workflows that can solve a lot of the inefficiencies versus using, say, Zapier as an example?
I think a lot of softwares now are starting to realize the importance of allowing users to build the system in a way that works for them. So I've seen a lot of SaaS products recently. I mean, not recently, I'd say over the last like 5 years, really start to put their kind of own workflows in there. But I would say about 100% of the time, unless they're investing millions of dollars into like a Salesforce, and even then, Salesforce has add-ons and things that it doesn't do that other systems have been built for it, right? So looking at that extreme, 100% of the time, there's always going to need to be the flexibility. And to me, that's where, for me, what's in my back pocket is Zapier. Like I always know I can rely on Zapier as a tool to say, okay, well, this workflow doesn't work based off of this particular piece of information. So we're going to use Zapier as a flex. Like it basically takes every software that you have and just 10x it in terms of the potential of what it can do to a certain extent. But I think by having that as a tool, I obviously want to work natively as much as I possibly can. But Zapier is just, I mean, it's if I have a client that's like, oh yeah, we don't have a Zapier account. I'm like, all right, well, we'll go as far as we can without it. 100% of the time, we eventually have to get one because there's just a like Zapier's has been in the industry for so long. There's so much capability, whereas like these workflows that are just starting to kind of catch up, there's certain functionality that you just get in there and you're like, well, I was anticipating it to be able to have this, but it doesn't. So I don't have that flexibility. So we need to find something else to do. And I think that's where Zapier really comes in to like fix that. At least for me, it makes me feel like a wizard. I love it.
Yeah. And I'm a bit embarrassed to say that I met the founder probably back in 2012, and I was trying to ask him to add the platform that we were working with to his overall client stack. And he sort of, I had a call with him and he sort of gave me his strategy. And looking back now, if I just had have stepped out of my platform and looked at his bigger ecosystem, I think I would have been in a much better place. Whereas I was drinking the Kool-Aid of one rather than seeing the clear vision that he had at the time. And, he's done incredibly well. So you've been with it, roughly 12 years with Zapier. What are the things that you know as someone who's so learned on the platform that you often see business owners miss?
I would say probably the biggest thing is when building automation, building it in a way that is dynamic and set for scale. So to use an example, right, like there are certain scenarios where the way I build the Zap is that it's assigning to the same sales rep every single time. But one of the questions I ask all of my clients, especially during the sales process, is saying, well, is this always going to be assigned to this sales rep? There's inevitably going to be sales rep churn over time. So how can we make sure that this automation, if I add a sales rep, I'm not having to go into this automation and change it every time. We're identifying these maintenance and scale questions as we build the automation. And we either identify it and clearly document, if we add a sales rep, we have to build a version of this Zap for this specific sales rep. And we make that extremely clear to the client. But I try to avoid that at all cost because I want to reduce the amount of maintenance. I don't want automation to end up becoming something that the business owner is constantly having to go in and fix, right? We want to make sure that we're building it in a way that grows with the business and promotes that growth. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see, as well as just, especially when people start to scale, they're not necessarily looking at things holistically. So another example would be like, okay, well, our lead forms going from our website to our CRM. That's fine. But if we start getting hundreds and thousands of leads per month, and then we inevitably, this is what happens all the time, they start scaling, they're spending more money on marketing, they get more email addresses, their email deliverability starts to tank, and because they're not validating emails at all during the lead submission process. So then it's always like, okay, boom, we're throwing in lead submission email validation so that we won't send you an email with a score below 70. Let's keep our deliverability high. And I think, again, by being in those startups for all those years, the amount of times I would be in like a enterprise level meeting with these other executive partners and they would say like, well, no, that's the website guy. I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's like, I'm talking like basic HTML here. Like I'm talking like basic UTM tracking. Like you're telling me that you are the head of channel marketing at this massive business, like contextually don't understand what I'm talking about. And it just blew my mind. I just was like, I never want to be that person. So I think by having a strategic partner like me that sees, okay, well, how is marketing going to leverage this data as it goes down the path? How is sales going to leverage this? How can sales and marketing be symbiotic of one another and make sure that if sales is having a call and we identify a pain point that marketing isn't aware of, the marketing team is notified and it lets them know, hey, this is a benefit that we didn't even know existed. But instead of having the sales team and marketing team constantly kind of bickering with one another, it's they work together symbiotic. And I think automation really plays a strong role in that.
Yes.
And so that's it's just, oh gosh, I could talk for hours about
Yeah,
that.
no, look, and I think it's, like I remember back in the days when, I was in corporate, we were implementing SAP, which any of you watching and listening to this, SAP is black and white, right? Like there's no gray in SAP. It's, German developed. It's like, it's either this or that. And the hardest thing was us trying to get our head around all the workarounds that we'd created in the past. Like all the exemptions. It's like, okay, now you got to remove the exemptions and everyone's got to follow the system. And it was like absolute chaos, right? It was the SAP part of it was easy. The getting people not to work around the exceptions. And I think that's what we do as business owners. We tailor something to a person and a personality. But as you scale, you can't rely on that, right? It's got to be more agnostic. And, I was lucky that I worked for one of the largest companies in the world where you always thought, well, how's this going to impact everyone? Right. And what you said is how what's this going to look like as it rolls out? And you had to do that. Whereas, yes, I find a lot of when you're a consultant working with the business owners, you got to get them to see outside of that, right? Like Jill or Jack, fantastic, but this isn't building a system for them because anything could happen to them, or you bring in a new person. What is it? So I think having that foresight is really important. As far as there's a lot of noise. YouTube, TikTok at the moment, N8N, Make, Zapier. Is there any fundamental differences you see as a practitioner between the three?
I think when it comes to Zapier, I think a lot of these other solutions are very much kind of nipping at their heels. And I think that they are really trying to capitalize on potential gaps that Zapier has, which is competition. That's the way
Yes.
the world works. And so I think for me, it's not one of those things where like in terms of loyalty, right? Like I'm not Zapier is probably my go-to.
Yes.
But if I have a client that comes to me and is like, hey, we're using N8N, it's like, okay, it's an automation platform with a different sticker on it. Like it essentially is going to do the exact same thing. It's going to leverage the exact same API endpoints.
Yes.
Like if not, I can build custom endpoints. So it's like I can build custom requests and do whatever I want to do. So there, in terms of like the overall differences of it, to me, it feels more like a personal preference
Yes.
than it does like a very strong distinction in comparison maybe to like CRMs, where like if somebody comes to me and says, this is our business model, this is how we work, I'm going to suggest a CRM to them specific to what fits their business model, right? If they need custom objects, if they need to be able to connect objects to multiple records, then it's like, okay, well, we're definitely not going to suggest that you go to this very simple CRM.
Yes.
Like you're going to need something that's more sophisticated. And that's what we will suggest to them. Whereas like, I feel like with most automation platforms, they all kind of do the same.
Similar
It's
thing.
really going to be just like the reliability, what native integrations and partnerships do they have, and
Yes.
maybe ease of use and price,
Yeah.
right? Because I've
Yeah.
had people who are like, "Oh, you make your clients do Zapier, it's so expensive," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, again, like it comes down to it. Like if you're investing to automate 100,000 plus tasks a month, it would really suck if you didn't pay that much and then it all went south. Like that's where to me the reliability and the ease of going in and fixing the errors and monitoring those errors. That's so critical to me with Zapier that I have yet to look at another automation platform and be willing to like put my clients on that and say like, oh yeah, go ahead and go, let's migrate you from Zapier to this other platform to what, save $3,000 or $4,000 when it's like Zapier's already saving based off of the automations we've built and the employees you would have had to hire. Like it's already saving you thousands of dollars a month. So it just seems kind of like such a huge sacrifice for really not that big of a return. Now, if you're like a very, very much like beginning business, I'm like, you know what? It's the wild, wild west. Have a blast. Do what you got to do. But like
Yes.
I said, normally my clients are kind of medium, just starting to really scale and take off. And so if we're really wanting to put the time and investment into automating the business, I want to put it into a system that I know is going to be reliable.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're recording this in October of 2025. There's a lot of talk at the moment that Open AI, ChatGPT have just opened their sort of version of creating connectors and agents, and there's MCPs, and everyone's talking about that. Will it be the death of the automation? The three big guys at the moment, Make, Zapier, and N8N. Will it be the death of them? And I'm going to ask you what your view on that is. But I think the most important thing before we get to that is it's just a tool. The most important thing is what is the system that you want to set up to run your business, focus on that, and then the tool just helps expedite that. I know that's the common theme right through this and what you do very well, giving you startup experience. But I think for you, if you're a Zapier expert, remember that that's going to change. You're not a Zapier expert. You're someone that's solving a specific set of problems for someone, and you're getting them a result. You just happen to do it with tools like Zapier. If I go back to the original question, which is how do you see LLMs also playing into the space of the automation tools that exist at the moment?
I think what they're going to do is, I don't know, I think a lot of it too is, to me, LLMs is 100% dependent, maybe not 100%, but I'd say pretty drastically dependent on the prompter, how somebody uses that tool. So I think for somebody who does the work to learn kind of the basic idea of automation and maybe some of the best practices, like they will be able to enhance their knowledge using LLMs and automation. But to me, the largest part that's missing with LLMs and automation, right, is like they don't have the contextual knowledge of the business and the strategy of like, well, what's the implication, right? Like they're going to tell you like, yes, best practice is to set up an automation from your leads to your CRM. Cool, great, right? But like it's not necessarily going to sit there and tell you, oh, well, let's do email validation. Let's make sure that all the names, our emails are formatted correctly. Are we validating data, right? Like all of those things to me, it's not going to enhance that unless the prompter is asking, like, what do I need more to know? So to me, LLMs, and I think especially in my business, they've become more of like an enhancer
Yes.
than like becoming fully reliant on it. Because even like going into Zapier and being like, hey, tell me what automation you want me to build and I'll build it for you. There isn't a time where I do that and go, cool, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Right. Like and for maybe some beginners, like that does work. But I think when it comes to the sophistication of businesses as they go from kind of small, medium, and really start to scale, unless AI has the contextual knowledge of what your objective is and what you're trying to achieve, again, it to me kind of sits in the same realm on the spectrum of like strategist and executioner to just like virtual assistant. It's a virtual assistant that's just going to spit out whatever you ask it. So you have to be so intentional with how you ask it versus a strategic partner where someone like me, right, is going to have that contextual knowledge. I'm going to understand the implications of what those automations mean. So like I have, whenever I see a post that's like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take all of our jobs, I look at somebody who's built an automation using an AI and I'm like, I'm sure AI is more than capable of doing it, but you're
Yes.
also relying on the human's ability to prompt. And that to me is most business owners as they get to that point, like it's a full-time piece of education. Like it takes a lot of work to build to that point to be able to prompt to that. And I would just suggest business owners just hire someone to do it who can get it done faster and not one that's going to be who's asking the right questions, because AI is not going to ask those questions. AI is not going to push back and say, well, what does this actually mean? If we build the automation this way, that could potentially disrupt and create a loop. And if it creates a loop, then we're going to burn through our automation tasks. Like, so that's where to me, LLMs, I think that they are beneficial for very much like beginners and maybe enhancing general knowledge. But I think Experts are always going to need to play a very strong role, I think.
If I quickly look at the way that I use it, is that I've got my knowledge base, which is proprietary, that's not external. So if you
Yeah.
come to me for help, you can't get my knowledge, my proprietary knowledge. Yes, I do podcasts like this with you and solos, etc. But a lot of it's still either in my mind or it's in a database that I don't share to the world, right? Now, what I can do is I can upload that and not make that public. Therefore, it's definitely helped within that regard. But I'll look at a business plan. I'll take a call from a client. I'll put it into my business plan creator that uses all my knowledge base, and it'll come out, and it's okay, but it still needs me to overlook and do things that, like you said, the LLM's not capable of doing at the moment. If we get to completely agentic, maybe, but at the moment it's not. So I agree. And it's a bit, to me, it's a bit like a turbo in a car. Like ultimately, you still need a driver. There's still the road rules, etc., of car, like the road rules of business. But AI is like a turbo that just makes it go a lot incredibly faster, right? It's more efficient. So I think that's where we are at the moment. Now we're recording this in October. Who knows what's going to happen when this comes out in December? I think that's the way it's going. What we're going to do now is just a reminder. It's episode 654, and we're talking to Jared Weiss. We're going to take a short break, thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back and do the rapid fire. Quick break. If you're getting value from these stories, join my newsletter. Every week I share what's working with tech consultants escaping the project grind. Who to target, what business models work best, real client transformations. No fluff, just the pattern I've seen work over 200 times. Join at paulhigginsmentoring.com newsletter. Now back to the podcast. So Jared, ready for the rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right, great. So, we've mentioned automation, we've mentioned Zapier, etc. But what's an AI tool that's really blowing your mind at the moment?
Zapier's agents has been pretty fun.
Fantastic. What has been your best go-to-market? You're 2.5 years in. What's working best for you to gain these businesses that you're helping with?
Honestly, a lot of it has just been Upwork.
And where do you go to learn more about how you're going to drive matixflows.com?
I think there's a couple of people on Instagram that I really like to follow. I think, I'm pretty skeptical. I'm a pretty skeptical guy. So usually by the time I'm following someone, like they're adding a lot of value, what they're doing makes sense. And it isn't this, get rich quick, scheme that just is like, you can make $30,000 tomorrow. That's very much a turn off for me. So people that are focused and have proven that they know what they're doing and that are realistic, I think are the types of people that I look for.
Right. So you're probably not going to be in the comma club. The last one is, you've been running your own business for 2.5 years now. What do you know now that you wish you had known earlier?
I think it would have been the breakdown of what you make as a freelancer. I think if I would have known and had a better idea of what I do now with my business in terms of percentage breakdown of what I make, I think I would be a little bit further along, but I'm also really enjoying the journey. So I think if I would have better understood when I very first started what it is I was charging versus what I was actually bringing home that I could put food on the table with, I think I would have treated that a lot differently. But we're all learning. So we got here.
Fantastic. Well, look, great to have you on. And if you're looking for support in automation, because you might be doing a particular platform, but your client needs more help with systems, etc., certainly look up for Jared. I'll put all the information on how to get to him, etc. But great having you on today, and thanks for sharing your world and your 2.5 year journey.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Paul, for having me. It was a real pleasure.
What a great interview with Jared. And if you've got clients who need systems beyond your specific platform expertise, and they also need lead flow routing, cross-functional workflows, or data integrity across multiple tools, Jared could be your strategic partner. He works alongside platform consultants to handle the automation layout while you maintain the primary client relationship. Reach out to Jared Weiss on LinkedIn and thank him and ask him any questions. As you can tell, he's a fantastic guy, very curious and always wants to help. Also, you can check out Matix Flows, so Matix flows.com to see how you might collaborate with him. Watch this episode on the YouTube channel, which is Paul Higgins Mentoring, and reach out to me. Let me know that you watch or listen. It's always brilliant to hear from you as a listener. I'll see you next time on my podcast. What's your key takeaway from today? I'd love to hear. Want weekly insights on who to target and what to sell. Join my newsletter at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter and share this with another tech consultant ready to escape the project grind.